Pozdravljam vas na okrogli mizi Amnesty International o institucionalnem rasizmu. To je uvodni dogodek festivala Ljubljana 2011. Lepo pozdravljam naše goste. Gospa Doreen Lawrence. Gospe Doreen Lawrence je rasistično motiviran umor njenega sina tragično zaznamoval življenje in se še dobrih 18 let aktivno bori za to, da bi dosegla pravico zanj. Tudi Mirjana Učakar, kot ena izmed izbrisanih, se je bila dolga leta prisiljena skoraj vsakodnevno boriti za tiste pravice, ki jih večina od nas šteje za samoumevne. Z nami pa je tudi gospod Gorazd Kovačič iz Filozofske fakultete, ki ga bomo med pogovorom prosili za nekaj pojasnitev ali komentarjev.
Morda bi za začetek opozoril na to, da obstaja razlika med diskriminacijo in rasizmom. In ta razlika je kvalitativna. Koncept diskriminacije je pravni koncept in ga je mogoče seveda tudi pravno sankcionirati. In demokratične institucije priznavajo, da se diskriminacija dogaja. In imajo pa tudi mehanizme, kako se da to diskriminacijo popravljati. Nihče v demokratičnih družbah pa se noče priznati tega, da je rasist. Pri rasizmu imamo opravka z nekim bolj težje ulovljivim pojavom.
Že Konvencija Združenih narodov o odpravi vseh oblik rasne diskriminacije, ki velja že od leta 1969, opredeljuje rasno diskriminacijo kot kakršnokoli razlikovanje, omejevanje, izključevanje ali dajanje prednosti na podlagi rase, barve kože, porekla, etničnega ali narodnega izvora. Še širšo definicijo uporablja Evropska komisija proti rasizmu in nestrpnosti, ki opredeljuje rasizem kot neenako obravnavanje na podlagi rase, barve kože, etničnega narodnega porekla, izvora, jezika in vere. Zato, da bomo dejansko se razumeli danes v tem pogovoru, pa je pomembno upozoriti še na institucionalni rasizem.
Pri institucionalnem rasizmu gre po mojem razumevanju za to, da institucije v svojih čisto rednih, običajnih postopkih slabše, neenako obravnavajo določene skupine ljudi in to je, ta slabša obravnava je legitimirana z nekim prepričanjem, ki je globoko vsajeno v tisto družbo, da so te skupine manj vredne oziroma problematične, oziroma kot je lepo rekla gospa Lawrence, da so v bistvu te skupine predvsem storilci nekih problemov.
In 1993, I was doing my degree, studying my humanities degree, and I went away on a field trip and I left on the Tuesday morning. I arrived home on the Thursday evening, and when I got home, my two younger children was at home and Stephen was out, but that was fine because he was 18, so there was no restriction on him being out late. I settled down and was to watch the news, which started at 10, and about 10:30 there was a knock on my door, and when I opened the door, I didn't open the door, my ex-husband opened the door, and all I could hear, I was upstairs, all I heard was Stephen's name mentioned, so of course I ran downstairs and wanted to know what was happening to him. And there was a young man with his father. I knew them because they live at the end of my house, so I knew who they were. And the young man said that Stephen and his friend was attacked at a bus stop. The police said they don't know nothing of the incident, they had no information. So we got into our car and we drove down to the area in which that we were told, which is the Welcoming Pub, which I know very well. And when we got there, we didn't see anything. There's nothing alerting us that there was anything happening. We did not see any blue lights flashing, we saw nothing. So we thought, let's go to the hospital. The hospital wasn't that far away. So I walked into the accident and emergency area, and I looked around, I didn't see Stephen there. So I thought, okay, he's not here. then a little while later, a nurse or a doctor came out to say that Stephen had died. And it's like time stood still. How do you mean he's dead? He can't be. Started arriving at the hospital, and everyone wanted to know what happened to Stephen. Eventually, we were shown into the room where he was, and he had a sheet up to his neck here, so you couldn't see the rest of his body. All you saw was his face. But he just looked as if he was sleeping. He had a cut on his chin. And it was almost as if it was transparent, because it was just like it's sort of luminous, so it just looked really transparent. And another family member came, and later on we went back into the waiting room. We were brought back to where Stephen was, and she pulled the sheet off, and you could see all the wounds on his neck, one on his arm, and we were told later that the wound on his neck had severed the main artery, the main blood vessel was severed, and the one in his arm penetrated his lungs and his heart. So it had gone right through his arm into his body. We were there for a while, not knowing what to do, and eventually we went home. Nobody spoke to us, no police officer asked who we were, how did we find out about Stephen. We were just totally ignored. So they police never actually spoke to us and gave us information. We'd always get the information from the police. They never speak to us and tell us anything. And that was something that went on for a long time. And in the early stages, I wasn't that vocal. I wasn't involved in all the questioning. But on the 6th, just after we met Nelson Mandela, and we were invited to the police station, and we went along. And before I went, I wrote down all the names that people were giving us. And I thought, well, maybe they didn't get the information, so I need to give them that information. So I wrote all the names down. And as I walked into the room, I handed one of the officer the sheet of paper with the names I wrote these names on. And as we sat down, everybody was talking, and I was quiet, I didn't say anything. And I watched this officer fold up the piece of paper into, it was so small, it was the size of a postage stamp, and he had it in his hand. And the whole time I still didn't say anything. As I was leaving, I said to him, "You're going to put that in the bin." And he was so shocked. He goes, no, we treat everything that we get. But clearly, he had no intention of looking at those names, because they had no intention to catch his skills. We found out much later that one of the boys, his family was very well known to the police. They were known criminals, and so the police know them. And I also heard that within the area those boys lived, everybody knew about them because they're known for carrying knives, they're known for attacks on other people. So this was nothing new, but yet the police did nothing. And so they spent the first 2 weeks investigating my son, investigating us, because as far as I'm concerned, because you're black, you have to be a criminal, you have to be into drugs, you have to be a perpetrator. And so rather than looking for Stephen's killers the whole time, they were investigating us, hence they collected no evidence on the scene on the night. They didn't go around to the boy's house, so they were allowed to get rid of all the evidence. We were told that they left their house with a black bag, with their clothing, we assumed to be clothing that they dispose of. So up until today, they only have a certain amount of forensic evidence, very small, minute blood. The rest of it, they've had nothing, because they collected nothing. I believe the judge was brought in special because the Crown did not take action. In fact, we as ordinary members of the public were taking action. And I believe if we had succeeded, we would not only had shown up the Crown, but also the justice system within Great Britain, and it's not something I think they would have allowed to happen. So this judge was brought in, and he did not allow any of the evidence that we had. We didn't have one evidence, we had a combination of things. And I believe had the jury saw everything, they would have convicted them. but the judge instructed the jury to bring a not guilty verdict against 3 of them without the jury seeing anything.
Kaj je rasizem? Rasizem je ideologija, ki človeštvo razdeli v več skupin in te skupine obravnava kot neenako vredne. In tradicionalni rasizem se je opiral na neke biološke konstrukcije, se pravi, ljudem, posameznikom je pripisoval skupinske lastnosti, skupinsko identiteto na podlagi nekih bioloških razlik. V sodobnosti, potem, ko je ta biološki rasizem doživel seveda velik debakel, predvsem s porazom v drugi svetovni vojni, v sodobnem času se pa rasizem opira predvsem na kulturne razlike in meni, da so skupine, ki imajo različno kulturo, različno vredne. Zdaj, kolikor govorimo o diskriminaciji kot taki, gre v bistvu za kršenje pravice do enake obravnave. Diskriminacijo lahko izvajajo različni akterji. Če govorimo o institucionalni diskriminaciji, potem bi poudaril predvsem tole. Institucionalna diskriminacija ni toliko v tem, da posamezni, recimo uradniki, neke uradne osebe, ravnajo pristransko, diskriminatorno zaradi nekega svojega posebnega predsotka do nekega uporabnika te institucije in pri tem te uradne osebe kršijo pravila institucije. Pri institucionalnem rasizmu gre bolj za to, da je samo, bom rekel, normalno delovanje institucij takšno, da povzroča slabšo obravnavo določenih skupin. Skratka, uradnik se drži utečenih procedur in vendarle ravna diskriminatorno.
Najbolj grda izkušnja, ki jo imam v času od 92. leta pa do danes, pa je sodelovanje na odboru za notranjo politiko v januarju 2010. leta, kjer se je razpravljalo o sprejemu zakona, ki bi izbrisanim, ki še nimajo statusa, omogočil pridobitev tega. Takrat sem se prijavila za besedo in gospod Gorenak, ki je vodil sejo, je odločil, da pač kot izbrisana ne morem dobiti besede. Govorec je bil gospod Kovač z Amnestyja in odločil se je, da bo svoj govor prepustil meni. Seveda je gospod Gorenak bil zelo nevoljen. Rekel je, da sem se trenutku prelevila v aktivistko Amnestyja in mi je moral dati besedo. Tam so me na zelo grde in podle načine žalili. Počutila sem se zavrženo in nič vredno kot še nikoli v življenju. Zopet so mleli stare neresnice o tem, da pač izbrisani nismo hoteli državljanstva in največji sovražniki izbrisanih so govorili in mleli in to je trajalo nekaj ur in po tistem sestanku sem mislila res, da me bo konec. Tako da v bistvu najgrša izkušnja prihaja z samega vrha. Druge še vedno nekako je bilo razumevanje, recimo pri policiji, ki bi smatrala, da bo najbolj rigorozno ukrepala, da bo pač vse skupaj imelo neke posledice in da bo mogoče celo izgnana, se ni zgodilo nič, tukaj v državnem zboru pa je bilo vse skupaj res podlo.